Hello and welcome to this webinar. This is one of the Tuesday night webinars we do where we discuss many issues that affect us in the UK and indeed globally as well. And in many of those issues that we discuss, we have a fairly broad brush, but we are concentrating on two or three in the coming year specifically. Doesn't mean we're not doing other issues, we certainly are, but we are going to look at two or three, and one of those is education. And we've already started on that. We had a really successful House of Commons meeting a month or so ago on self-organised learning. And it was a very well-attended meeting and an excellent meeting to start things off. And we're going to do a series of events in the coming year, which includes events with the Ethical Society in Conway Hall and a number of webinars as well. We're doing work on transformational education and also on education and exclusion. Now we've got Dhruv Patel with us today, and you can see him here, and I'll introduce him in a minute just before he speaks. Now Dhruv is a person who spent a lot of his time, a lot of his working life working on the problem of exclusion, because we know a huge number of people are excluded from schools every year. And many of these people that are excluded are not excluded because of behavioral problems, as we would think. Many of them are people who have learning disabilities, for example, or they're in need of special need. And many of these are excluded because schools find it difficult to cope, and because they've got to keep targets up and they have to keep into budget. They tend to not be able to tackle this problem in the way that they would like or that they should. So Dhruv, through his own foundation, the Nisai Foundation, has really started to tackle this problem himself, to tackle this problem by bringing those people together to get the education they need, both face-to-face and online. And he has a big online way of educating people as well. I'm not going to tell you much more about it, but I'll go straight over to Dhruv in a sec, and he would tell us about the problem of exclusion and what he's done. But just to remind you, when he speaks, please don't wait for him to finish to type any comments you've got or to put any questions in. Just do it as he speaks, and then we'll be ready to ask him prep questions as we go along. And Fong, who you can see here, will also help with the questions as we put them to Dhruv once he's finished his presentation. Anyhow, Dhruv, thank you for doing this, and I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Fong, for having me on here. And good evening, everybody. So I'm Dhruv Patel, and I'm the CEO of the Nisai Group. As Francis said, I've been involved in education and training for the last 20 odd years, and part of that has been in the Nisai Virtual Academy, which we set up for the specific reason for initially we started it as teaching children who are medically ill, but to try and get them to education. So what I'd like to do is share a few minutes on what we do by sharing a PowerPoint with you of how we do things. What do we do? So how do we support learners who are excluded or at risk of exclusion? One of the challenges which we found was that when we first started, medically ill students were not getting any education. And what used was that they would, the school or the local authority would send teachers at their homes to educate them. In most cases, they might be not subject specialists. They might not get the same kind of learning as a normal learner in a school would get. So they were actually slightly disadvantaged. It was not because these people wanted to not to learn, it was because they just couldn't do it. So we came up with a technology which allowed us to do this at a distance. And that's how we came across the Nisai Virtual Academy. So what is Nisai? So we have over 20 years of experience. We are one of the longest serving online learning organizations in the UK. Through our work, we have worked with the Education Skills Funding Agency. We are now a registered post-16 high needs college. In that we can educate children with special educational needs or EHCP post-16. We are also had an inspection on our Learning Hub, which we are an independent registered school. And we are also on the DFE registered lists. So we have actually gone through a lot of quality assurance with the department and offset, but also more importantly, we are now, if a parent wants under the 2010, 2014 Children's Act, we have been approved as a Section 41 provider, which means that in England, every local authority needs to have a local offer. And by statute, they have to have those organizations which we have approved by the state under Section 41 to be put in their local offer. So if a parent wants one of their children to be educated by Nisai, then the local authority has to fund us. So that was a very important milestone in the whole area of learning with this distance learning or online learning. We've also worked with charities like Times Trust to look at how we can, and we have got significant work done with them in terms of getting the online education recognized by the statutory bodies. And then lastly, we just recently got registered and we're included in a register of approved training for the apprenticeships. So all of this means that we have been going through the hoops and loops to get ourselves quality educated, and more importantly, make sure that all our learners get very high quality education. So the ethos is specializing students with barriers to learning, and perhaps also challenging, because when these children who have behavior issues, it's not because they're born with bad behavior, it's because things have changed for them, or they're not recognized, or they have not been identified what's wrong with them. So that's why they may have an interest. That 99% of our students have some sort of learning barrier. And one of the areas which we wanted to create was a community, a learning community, where professionals can create a thriving and vibrant community for our learners. So that's what we have created, how we should bring it in. And it's all about putting the learner in the center of the learning experience, rather than a learner just being a number. So, you get a team around a learner, and that's what we're trying to do in our platform and how we work together. So in terms of our cohorts, who we work with: medically ill, bullied, SEMH, excluded, disaffected, school refusers. We have we have young people who are gifted and talented, to children who just come out of the young offenders unit. So we've got a wide range of learning abilities in that. And the technology, the blended learning, allows us to identify and create a personalized learning programs for them. We have quite a few number of program options. So we've got core curriculum, which we started Key Stage 3 and 4, and now we have started that, as we have seen, that there is a move for children to be excluded at primary as well, which is quite shocking, but that's where we're starting to see. So we have started to look at Key Stage 2 and last year of Key Stage 2 and see how we can boost them up. We also have things like step-out programs where a child wants to have time out, so they can go out for 6 weeks or 12 weeks away, so they can work themselves out with a mentor to see how they can, what things they've done wrong and how we can reintegrate them. So we got a number of provisions which meets the needs of these learners. And of course, we make it accessible to high quality education, which is also mainstream education. So they're still doing their GCSEs, they're still doing their A levels, and if they're not able to do that, they can do functional skills and vocational skills. In terms of the other thing we got is a vocational center, where we have a physical center where learners come in to take vocational courses as well with us. So we give quite a wide variety of options for our learners. In Key Stage 3 and 4, everything is standard, it's core, and more flexibility, whichever they want. So, it's not as if they're given something which is just meant for them. They get a real mainstream education, but accessible by them wherever they can and wherever there's a computer and internet connection. Right. We also work with the schools. We work very much in the schools by having spatial areas where the children can learn themselves in a different way. Not everybody learns the same way. So there is a very, very good advantage of using this kind of learning. And within the schools, by using this core curriculum, one of the things which we're trying to do is to stop them excluding the kids. Otherwise, they will be excluded. So by having them in there, making sure that they get learning, and in short term, they might come on our core curriculum. After 6 weeks, they might say, right, okay, this is the best way for us to learn, and they will then learn this way. And the schools are quite happy to work with us on this, which is quite a nice sea change for us. And the Step Out is a similar kind of program which works, again, it's more on the looking at the behavioral, motivation, and attitude, and also at the same time giving the core. But it gives the school and the children the respite they need. So this allows us to make sure we don't have that many exclusions. We're trying to limit the exclusions from the school. Where we have situations where they're medically ill, they don't or can't behave, they have a mental anxiety, then we got long-term programs in Key Stage 3 and 4, GCSEs, A-levels as well. And again, if we can reintegrate them back to school, they can go back to school, or they'll stay with us till they do their exams. So we have quite a nice little stuff where they can move from one to other. Where we have seen children who have been really cannot get into school, there we have to provide a nurturing environment. We have got to have the mentor and the tutors on the ground, and also have them some vocational traits. So we can then provide also the core and academic qualifications as well. So this thing, and we started this in 2012, just to prove that there's an alternative, different way of handling this kind of young people. And every year since 2012, we have been able to get all our learners into either further education, apprenticeships, or jobs. And what we were able to get was a lot of these were not supposed to get anything. So we were very, very happy that our Nisai and graduates from the hub are finding jobs and longer term qualifications as well. So the virtual academy is it's the center part of our virtual academy. This is where lessons are timetabled every day. Throughout the day, we have live teachers online. We actually don't take by year groups. We take them by ability. So we assess them on ability. We have small class sizes, and we have a very good staff-teacher ratio. But it is live, and the students can, like we're using this technology here, the students can hear us, and they can also work with us, and they can work through lots of tools which the technology allows us to do. So we also make sure, because the children who come to us are in the last chance saloon, we make sure our teachers are trained very well. We have complete continuous teacher training programs. CPD, we have very high quality internal assessment and appraisals and observations, which allows us to see if any changes needs to be made on learning, teaching and learning. But again, it is very, very driven for the learner and the outcomes of the learner. We also have a much wider remit for our learners. We want to develop each learner in a holistic way. So we have extracurricular activities, we have student voice, we have debating teams, we have an N-Tribe magazine, and we have a lot of other things which are going on, which allows our learners to have a full experience of the learning, just not physical classroom, but communities as well, as you will see. So this is our virtual academy. As you can see, when they come in, they've got a lot of things going on here, right? You've got Student of the Week, where a lot of our learners haven't been recognized, and we recognize if they do something good, whether it's academic or getting something which might be just getting outside the door and walk 10 meters because they can't walk out of their front door. So anything which helps them with us, we actually recognize that. We have various things in there. We have also a secure email system, which we want to make sure that our learners are ready for work. So they're using technology, they're using the email, they're also using collaborative tools where they work together. Technology allows us to get them to collaborate as well. So we also have our well-being center, and which was based on every principle, every child matters. So we got My Health. There we give them information about how to stay healthy. We got My Community, which gives them what they should do about the community, both online and in the community they live in. My is all about being safe online, but also staying safe on the streets and in the house. And My Future is information about what they can do in the future, careers, where do I go after A levels or apprenticeships. So all that information there in one place they can have. We also have what we call our chill out zone, which is our community site. And the community site has got everything like from the cookery club to debating club to creature corners where everybody brings their photographs. But because this is safe and secure, we don't allow anybody else to come from outside unless they are a Nisai learners or Nisai faculty staff. Commercial staff don't got access to it. So it's very, very protected site. And so it's the learners can do, and so far, and it's, everything is moderated as well. So it gives the learners very safe area to express themselves. Benefits is flexible. All our services are online and they can access from anywhere. A learner can come from the library, can come from a museum. We have in our Nottingham site, we have also outreach where we have our mentor, which will go in and go to the house and collect the learner from the house and take them to a library or a museum or anywhere where we need to help them with their social development as well. And again, all the time through the laptop or the tablet, they'll be getting their English, math, science, and ICT, or any of the subjects they need to have. You know, so it is very, very interesting for the learners, and we can give them a lot of different modalities to work from. We have a very good tracking system. All the software, apart from the conferencing software, is written by us, by our software developers in Stockton. And we don't sell the software to anybody. So it's mostly investment for our learners only. And everything is there to make sure we can see how the journey the learner has taken. And it's very important that that gets, it's not about the GCSEs, it's the whole journey which they take with us, you know. Some of the case studies. So these are the kind of groups we work in, disadvantaged groups. So Andrew had been with us for nearly 8 years now, and he's now doing at Lincoln University. Molly was, the judge asked her if she decided to come with us, then she'll stay with us. Otherwise, she'll have to go to Young Offenders Units. And she came and she decided to become a photographer and designer, fashion designer. Daniel, up till when he turned 25, was with us. He did one subject a year with us, and he wanted to be an accountant. He had absolutely, his cognitive senses was fantastic. He used to use his jaws, cheeks to use the mouse. So we will also work with displaced groups where we have people from, we used to did some training for English speakers, for non-speaking East African mothers who were in Melbourne in Australia, and we delivered that from here. And also we boosted their children's English and maths from London to Melbourne. In the UK, we work with newly arrived immigrants to boost and give them in literacy and numeracy so they can integrate and with the school systems very well and then quickly so they don't get left behind. We also have disengaged groups. So these are provisions from, like I said, mainly straight from primary school to secondary education, and the Nisai Hub is where a lot of them end up with us, you know, and then we are looking at work placement and traineeship with the employers using the similar kind of systems to move that forward. We also work with children in Ireland. So like in Sark, where there's a primary school for two-room primary school where we're teaching secondary education in there. We've now got students coming from as far as Baku, Middle East, Thailand. So they all come in, and what is a good thing about us, this is that they can come into a UK classroom, virtual classroom, with that, and taught by a British teacher, and they can still be in Baku and not come here. So the technology allows us to bring that world together in a nice little way. So one of the things which is quite interesting is what is our results looking like. So our 2016 results and 2017 results are similar. As you can see, we have quite a nice number of results, A stars to Cs, where 47%, 20% of students with SCN achieved A star to Cs, 99% were some form of learning barrier, and they achieved 47% A stars to C grades. And A stars to G, we had a very good percentage as well. So this thing works. It's not as if it's a project or research project. It has been working since nearly 15 years now. And every year we've been having better and better results and better outcomes. So with that, I'd like to just thank you for listening. And if you've got any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you, Dhruv. That was pretty thorough description of the work you do and how you go around it. And in fact, you've raised so many points that it's hard to know where to start. But let's start by asking you a question. I mean, you get someone referred to you, a young person, and we'll talk about how they get referred to you in a minute. But what's your first thing you do? I mean, do you people have care plans for people? Do you sit down? I mean, this person's got special needs. This one's got particular problems. We've got to develop an education plan. How do you start from the beginning to work on them? Because all your education seems to be very individualized.
Right. So when we get referred, we have a form which gives us mostly, hopefully, they'll be quite truthful, and they'll give us what the potential barriers are. We will then, once we have them on, whether it's an education healthcare plan, then it will be much more detailed. And they ask us to have our input into that and see what the education we need to provide on that. In certain cases, we might be asked to provide 5 GCSEs, and when we think it's only 3 will be right, then we'll go and say, look, 3 is what they can do, and we will take them on the journey with us. When they get referred, we will then have we'll link them online. We'll do an assessment as well. The assessment will tell us on literacy and numeracy where they are. We will then put them in a right groups, and depending on whether they are allowed to do mornings or afternoons, we will then arrange a timetable for them. Once they're in the live lessons, the subject matter people will the usual, they will be doing the assessments, and the subject matters people will say, right, okay, they are in a higher group or a lower group, right? So it is very much, and then if somebody doesn't get to that stage, then we will have them in different groups. But there are no more than 12 to 15 in a classroom.
David asked a question. He said you talked about the cohorts that the students are in and where they come from. Do you find sometimes they come from more than one cohort? They come from different, sections of need amongst the people you deal with, and how do you sort of deal with that?
Well, I mean, as you can see, what we have is the 4 Ds, right? And anybody within that 4 displays disadvantage, but they have come from within that. So what you have is we have children who are looked after children. We have children with anxiety. We've got children with medical health. We've got children with Asperger's, autism. So we have a whole range, and that's why, if you've got an autistic young person, this thing is absolutely brilliant for them because they don't have the noise levels around them. They have this microphone, they've got the voice, and they're talking. So they're very focused and very concentrated. And we get very good, right? And again, because they're very articulate and can be, they can also have good social stuff can be done through this. So we have a very wide audience for what we do.
Thanks a lot, Dhruv. I was asking about you sending children back to the schools where they have been excluded before, I suppose, or another school. So how does it work that you get children into you and then you send them back?
No, we don't. When they come to to us, and if we feel, and the school, the sponsoring school feels that they're ready to be reintegrated, then we will do that. If they're not ready for reintegration, then we will say no, because it's the education of the learner and their well-being is more important than what the school numbers are. In most cases, what will happen if the school is finding that it is working for the young person, they'll live with them with us, but because we don't have the children on our roll, the children are on school's roll. If they do very good grades, then the school gets it. So we are very complementary to that, not alternative for the school. So that partnership works.
And so another question I had is that when they go back to school, how are they doing? Are they doing well?
Well, if they are ready to go back to school, some of them are doing well. In fact, one of our learners, he came to us and he wasn't getting out of his bedroom and didn't want to go to the school. He joined us. After about a term or 2 terms, he decided that he wants to go back to school. And we understand now that he's doing his A-levels and want to become a vet. So it's not every day you get something like that, but it does happen.
Terry took your question up about going back to school or mainstream school, and he says you call it mainstream school. But in a way, what you're doing should be mainstream, because what you're doing is often better than what the schools are doing. You're actually providing an environment where people want to learn.
And that is it, because what happens is that when I'm interviewing my teachers, I always tell them that our learner has got the most powerful finger, off button. If they don't engage our learners, right, then we cannot take them on our journey with us. Okay, so we have to have that engagement, making sure that the stuff, the course, the experience is the right experience for them. Because the other thing which is quite interesting is that in a school system, in a classroom, you're in a classroom of 20 or 30 students and the door shuts, you are within there. Here, the learner is part of the stakeholder because they have taken the decision to learn. When we do their attendance, behavior, and contributions, right, we find that there are times when we find that they have not attended the school, but when they come on to us, their attendance is in 80s and 90%, and the behavior and contribution is fantastic as well. So you have a very different dynamics because they own the learning themselves.
Fong, you had a quite interesting question, didn't you, about how you do cookery online?
Right. Well, it's a cookery club. And you should see some of the stuff they bake cakes, and my God, the amount of cakes they bake, and they put photographs on it. So they do that. But we also started recently an online catering course where our tutor would give them the theoretical work, and they will have some workbooks, worksheets, which they will then learn how to do it themselves. Right, and it's quite good for those learners who are in looked after children or very much looking at transitioning into adulthood. So they get that basic skills.
Anna Rosa asked a sort of interesting question that, the teachers you get, I mean, they're in a new environment, aren't they? They're doing things in a way that they've never done before. It's not the normal way teachers teach. They work in teams to start with, and then they work online, secondly. So Anna's really asking the question, how do you recruit those teachers? How do you get the right people? How do you assess them, and what training do you give them that makes them, fit for doing a job which is so different to what they normally do?
One of the things which we have a very good way of recruiting. First of all, when anybody comes and joins us, before we get them, we say to them, right, if we like them, we say, right, now spend a half a day or a day with our teachers who are teaching online and see if you think that this is something you like. What we are looking within them is the passion, right? A lot of our teachers have come from mainstream, young teachers coming from mainstream, who actually have lost what's happening in the mainstream. They just don't feel that that's what they signed up to. So when they come to us, class and they see how they have actually, they're engaged in learning. They don't have to do the what do you call it, tutoring, gate duties or anything like working on lunch duties. They can actually spend time and do the teaching they want to do. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, on training, we actually do very good. Every week we have 2 half-hour sessions online like this, where every best practice is shared. We also have a number of programs like Thinking Schools programs. We have SEN programs which go into it. So there's a lot more help. The third thing is that our teachers, because I also tell them that they will be the most observed teachers on the planet Earth, because we don't know who's watching behind their learners' shoulders. Okay, so they have to understand that. And the other thing is that, when you don't see your learners, because even though we got webcam facilities, we don't allow that. They see there are more responses on the text chat, on the voice of the learner. So we got those kind of things going on. So we have a very much, what do you call it? Very tight control. The teachers are there and they work together as well. And because of the system allows us to see which everybody's schema works, they know where the students are.
And Anna says, do you take trainee teachers?
Yes, we started taking fresh graduates, brand new graduates, and we're putting them through our own teacher training program. Okay, and we've been very successful on that. It's amazing how they really perform, and they love it.
So David is asking how easy or difficult to re-engage children who have been excluded.
Okay, I mean, one of the things is the approach which is taken is the key to re-engaging learners, right? So the provision is to be structured in a way that replicates the school's provision. And also, we try and say to the schools, right, if you want to have them delivered to their home, we'll deliver it to the home. But then the school might say, right, okay, they might come 2 days a week into the school and they'll still learn with us. So it's a much easier, and it is working with the school to re-engage what is right for the learner. At the end of the day, you have to look at the learner and what their needs are. If the learner wants to go back to school and wants a school community, then you need to transition them in. And, we actually work very, very well with those schools who are partners with us in this scenario.
Okay, Anna asked a question I think that we all wonder about, and that's you do so much. How can you do it with the funding you've got? Are you funded only by the local authority, or do the parents pay anything, or do you go to charities, or is it because you don't have school building and capital and you do it the way you do, you can do so much more for the money you've got?
Well, we get our funding from either government or the schools. We do have private parents, but as you quite rightly say, we don't have the structures of the school. Saying that, we bring all our teachers to our sites. We don't allow our teachers to work from home, right? Even though you can, but we don't, because we need to have our teachers working together collaboratively, and and we find that common room environment works very well for our teachers, and also the quality is much better and higher. Okay, and we also find that because of the way we run we are very focused on the learners. So everything which is done has to be that route. So we don't have any other additional expenditure.
So that's quite interesting. So the teachers attend school, but the students are out there in the global world, in the global classroom. It's almost the reverse of what happens in reality.
Exactly. But then that's the way we can, like I said, I keep on saying to my people that we're the last chance saloon, and we have to make sure we don't let these kids down. The society might have, but we can't afford to.
Now, Terry actually loves what you're doing. He says he loves the fact that, kids can come in for 2 or 3 days and then they can be supported outside. It's a very flexible system, and it's built around actually motivation and making things relevant so the learner wants to learn. And I think he wishes that the whole education system could be like that.
I would love to change that. I'd love to.
Do you ever get any questions from the formal traditional education system saying that what you do is really interesting, we should maybe do it as well?
I think when we first started, we had a lot of think, why are you doing this? We should be doing this, and you should not be in business. Right? And my answer to that was, if we were doing the right job, we wouldn't be here. But you're not really, right? So we have to do it something different. And one of the reasons why we have just acquired an independent private school, a mainstream school, is to see how we can provide accessible education in a cost-effective way, right? Because education should not be a luxury. It's a basic right, So I feel that we should be doing more of this. And again, everybody talks about personalized learning. I think we can prove that we have done that.
David, they just come on from David, who say that now we go back to what we said before about the unlawful exclusion. So when you give children that kind of service, then you could also avoid the exclusion.
No, because you know what? There's a new thing which has come out recently in September, where the schools are quite happy in the afternoon to send a child home with a bit of work. Now there's a statutory guidance saying that is now unlawful exclusion, right? So it's something which is now becoming a major problem for a lot of schools.
And then Terry also said it shouldn't be the last chance saloon. It should be the first chance saloon. So you should rename your Nisai to First Chance Saloon.
Anna said, do you do extracurricular activities? And you do, don't you? Because you were talking about how, you help kids do things out of school, education extra, in other words.
What we're doing there is looking at ways with the Lamas is to see how we can actually bring in 21st century into what is an old-fashioned learning programs, and also look at how we can bring the SDG, this Sustainable Development Goals, into the primary, because this school is straight through school from 5 to 19. So it gives us a lot of opportunity for us to do something innovative and exciting.
I mean, it sounds exciting to me. And what I found interesting is that in order to have individualized learning for the learner, you have to have collaboration and teamwork with the teachers. So the more you individualize, the more teachers have to work in teams. And again, traditionally, They're not used to that, are they?
And that's exactly right. And what we have done is the systems which we have created are technological systems, which is at the back end, allows our teachers to work together. Okay. And, there's a lot more cross curriculum going on, right? So, they maths and they need graphs in chemistry. Why should you be teaching two streams? You should be trying to combine that. Okay. So our systems at the back end does that for them.
That's the Finnish system in Finland that people are looking at the moment. Instead of being subject-based, it's topic-based, which is interdisciplinary. Yeah. And is that the sort of approach that you're taking?
Yeah, exactly. Because that gives us a lot more flexibility and keeps the interest going for the learners. So even what we got Nisai Passport to Work for the mainstream at year 10. If they want to go into, say, childcare, we have this program called Passport to Work for Childcare. We have literacy, numeracy, childcare science relating to childcare. So year 12, if the employer likes them, then they will have an apprenticeship. So you have pathways for them, right? So we have created Passport to Work, Passport to Food, which is all the ecosystem. So we created a number of those programs, which can help youngsters to design their own pathways.
So Anna is asking about the basic, vital, and most important job for the society. So it is more like what you are doing. It is great. Do you give those students intercultural and civic education values? And psychological education to help them integrate and gain self-esteem and social skills?
Well, the thing is that, if you look at what is happening around, right, with the technological change coming around the corner, the last 5 years, we've seen huge leaps and bounds with the technology, artificial intelligence coming around the corner. We got robotics, we got all this happening. So, we have to make sure that our learners are able to be able to drive and reinvent themselves as the situation changes. So you have to give them learn, and you got to give them independent learning. You got to make them know how to learn new things, right? So it's not just about passing GCSEs with A stars and that. You need to give all other skills which would help them to take whatever is coming in the future. It's about giving them all-round approach rather than just GCSEs and A levels.
Yes, I think that's the difference that you are making, isn't it? It is the main thing that you attract those young people. You make them realize, you make them interested in school after the real mainstream school that you call them has given up.
You talk about a holistic approach, Dhruv, and does that mean involving the parents? And the parents are a part of the education system of a child. So do you involve them in any way to provide backup and support for the things that you do so that you work together?
And it was interesting when I went to a meeting in the private school with the parents. One of the things that they really appreciated was that we were not just going to make them hothouse, but more as a all-rounded learners going out, and making sure that address their emotional and mental issues as well. Emotional intelligence is very important as well to take care of,
And also, I mean, when you've got teachers in coming together in a team and you're working with students online, so they're out there individually, have you got ways of bringing the students together online as well so they can form a community? Because maybe, they've had problems with school and they've been bullied in school and they've been subject to peer pressure and they're a bit afraid of it. But online, they may have more confidence. And do you bring them together that way as well?
See, if you think about it, right, one of the reasons why we don't have video in our classes, because they don't see, first of all, it's totally inclusive. So because they don't see each other, they're not sitting next to each other, they don't know what their disabilities are, they don't have to mention. We have young people who are also transitioning their genders, but people don't know that, okay? So you have an ability which gives you to be yourself without letting everybody know. So we see children coming in, and then we see they might be elected mutes. And then next thing we know is they will only answer questions in a private text check. Then suddenly after 3-4 weeks, we might see them answering why, yes, in the main check. And then a couple of weeks later, they might say, can I speak, right? So, you see this, the distance traveled is amazing,
I mean,
some of these learners.
I mean, some of the things you do are a bit like the House of Commons meeting where we looked at self-organised learning. It's a bit like the experiments done in India called the Hole in the Wall, done by the self-organised learning environment in Newcastle. Are those the sort of principles you work on? Do you have any links with them?
Not at the present time, but it's something which we want to do that. We really want to do that. Right now, I'm working also in the Asia, and I was asked to speak at the ACN, and it was all about inclusivity, and it was all about how do we meet this kind of things, but how technology can help them, these learners, right, in remote areas as well, right? And it is quite interesting that even in the UK, whereas we are advanced, we still haven't got grasp of it. So it's different. Seeing things differently from different angles is what I'm really interested in now.
Yeah, because I mean, what they found is that if you've got kids, as they did from the slums in India, who really didn't like school, give them a computer, give them a subject, and they learnt within half an hour what it might have taken a week or 2 weeks for them to have even begun to pick up in school, because they were motivated. They combined play with learning, and suddenly they really enjoyed it. And it seems to me you're doing that as well, aren't you?
Yeah, because one of the things is, like I said, not only are they learning, but they also got a very good community. And, the other thing is staff are very passionate about things. So they will have a lot of things going on. And, our student officers, the community officer are amazing people, because they will make sure that learners are engaged. So it is not, and in fact, I would say that our students' parents have more access to us as teachers and our teachers than they would have in a mainstream school. So it's a very much a team effort.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be really successful. David, I think, here said that he knew someone who came from Nisai background and had complex needs, and her self-confidence and self-esteem improved while doing her education, which was something, I guess, that he found quite remarkable. And Terry Lone says he thinks up a link up with what you're doing and Sagata Mitra in Newcastle would be really fantastic, because it would be really valuable for developing a new education model.
It would be great, because our teaching center is in Stockton-on-Tees. So we're not far from, all our, in Stockton-on-Tees, we got the teaching center where we got about 30 odd people there, teachers, software people, customer support, student support, community. Right, it's all up there. So we're not very far from him. Yeah. It would be great.
Well, in that case, Terry, we should put them in touch with each other, because then we might get a real explosion of creativity, which is great.
Yeah, I think Diana has a question about social phobia. It is that person had to stop doing schooling. So your school would be great for that person.
This is something that's interesting, because they are not judged of what it is their problem. Our job is to take them on a journey. We're not judging them what they've got. It's to take them on a journey. The other thing is that, even if you're housebound, you should not, the technology allows you to be economically able to do something. Now the market comes to your house. You don't go to the market. Jobs come to you. You can do a job. We had up till recently, a young man who actually was so afraid of going out and he couldn't get out, but he used to develop some really nice models from games, Warcraft, and he was so successful, and he was doing A-levels. We also gave him some extra help in terms of marketing and stuff, but he was so successful that his parents left their jobs and they bought a big house, and he's now a very successful businessman, and he's doing he didn't he was working from home. We had a young person who actually couldn't get out of the house. We have a House of Lord event called Learning Beyond the Borders. Learning. And what we have is, once we have with Times Trust, we organize a House of Lords event where we bring some of our learners together and also introduce them to all the lords and ministers, to say this is the silent majority, guys. And they came and do present. And we had this young learner who couldn't come out of the house. She came from all the way from, I think it was Dudley, with her parents, coming through on train, through the underground, all the way to the House of Lords, and then stood up in front of 120 people to get her award from the Lord. And that was just amazing.
And I mean, the other thing about what you do that I find interesting.
So we have a number of stories like that.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be quite interesting to get some stories of some of your students, if we could find them and they'd be willing to talk about it. It would be, I think, interesting for a lot of people. And the other thing that interests me about what you're doing, of course, is you're developing an education, unlike other educations, it's not just based in the nation state. You're global. You can involve people from all over the world, can't you? And that creates a sense of global civics, global citizenship as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course it is. It is. I mean, we gladly, if they come to our Nottingham Centre, they can see our vocational and behavioral and that unit together. If they come to Stockton, they'll see the real whole thing, which is, the teachers, the software people, the whole experience will be there. So we have lots of people coming in, and we got a lot of international visitors coming to see us there as well.
Okay.
So we welcome.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, look, we're coming to the end of the time now. So can I sort of thank you, Dhruv, for doing that, and to everyone as well for the questions they asked, because they were really interesting. So, I know we're going to do more with Dhruv in the future, both on exclusion and other things as well. We're talking to Dhruv about doing another webinar because he's very keen on the sustainable development goals and how they can be involved in education and at primary school. And we're fixing up a date in January to do that. So that's really great as well. So we'll hear a lot more from Dhruv in the future. So thank you for doing that and for telling us what is an exciting, innovative project in education, which could have a repercussion on our whole education system. And I hope in the next year, when we develop our ideas, we can show that the work that you do has so much relevance in transforming our mainstream education system as well. So thank you for doing that, Dhruv, and we look forward to seeing you again another time.